I need to plant a propagated mulberry that's getting too big for its pot. So come along with me and I'll show you how I plant my mulberry trees, and this will apply to in the ground or in a container. First thing I'm going to need is a nice big container, something that's got holes in the bottom that's going to drain any excess water. As you can see, this pot here, I've got holes drilled around the outside at the bottom as well as the inside on the bottom. There's plenty of holes for drainage. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go around the outside of the container at the bottom, sort of on a diagonal, and I'm going to put a few extra holes just for extra drainage around the sides. I'm then going to fill that container with the beautiful sandy, loamy soil that I have here in my yard, plus some beautiful compost that's full of so many goodies that the tree is going to love it. And also I had a bit of a cleanup under some trees on my fence line, so I'm going to throw in some old leaves and a bit of dried grass that I collected along the way, and I'm just going to put those in, mix them in and get them to break down like compost over the long period of time. I give that mix a great big stir with my hands to start with, mixing it through. And if you're wondering about the measurements, I've got 60% of sandy, loamy soil, about 35% of compost, a rich compost, and about 5% of random leaves and grass that I've collected and blended into it. Once I've mixed that by hand, I get in there with a shovel and I get down deep and I give it a good mix right down to the bottom. So that way, over time, there's a good mix that goes all the way to the bottom. So when the roots start growing down, they're going to grow down and still be able to get some beautiful soil and nutrition from the compost and the stuff that's decaying in that soil. Now it's time to remove that tree from its old pot. And if I need to, and I will here, I'll give it a tap on the ground to loosen it around the roots. And for me, it slides out nicely. First thing I do is I look at the roots, and the roots look fantastic. They're all growing straight and down the pot. There's none wrapped around and root bound, so that's great. If yours are wrapped around and root bound, you can actually snip them and just go up the side one way and then go to the opposite side, snip them up the other way, and then you can loosen them, get your fingertips in and pull at them and loosen them, because what you want to do is encouraging the other roots that are growing straight to continue growing straight and to stop those that are wrapping around from wrapping around. Now in my case, I've cut 10% off the bottom of the root ball. You don't have to do it, but I like to, in the case of really big trees and really big pots, taking 10% off. 10% seems to be about the amount that you can get away with. So what I'm doing is I'm making a bit more room for this new pot, but also by cutting the bottom, I am cutting feeder roots, but what I'm going to do is I'm also going to encourage the other fine roots to start growing and looking out for nutrition. Now you don't have to do that, it's up to you. For beginners out there, I'd probably skip that step just to play safe, because you don't want to mess with the roots too much. Now, speaking of teasing the roots, before I pot it, I like to give the roots a tease around the top, loosening that soil so the new soil can come on top and combine with it and help with water penetration and nutrition penetration. And I'll go around the sides a little bit, but not too much in this case, because these roots are looking fantastic, going straight down like they are. With this being a bigger pot and all that soil around the side roots are going to have a chance to spread out as well. So it's going to be great for this tree here. So it's now time to get it into the pot with the soil. And what I like to do is make a well. So I'll actually remove a bunch of the soil into a container onto the side. And that way I've got a beautiful well. I can drop my tree down into there, give it a bit of a move, because you want to make sure it's going to stand even. You want to look at the sky and where your sun is, and you want to match up your leaves and your branches according to the sun. In my case, my branches are going to grow more left and right than front and back. So I'm lining mine up so it's going to get the sun coming over during the morning, daytime, and then in the evening. So that's going to work for me. So you look out for your sun and your sky and your position and work out what is best for you. Also, you want to make sure your roots, when backfilling, are in contact with soil. Get your fingers under there and squish some soil under the root ball, because you don't want air pockets with the roots. Roots in air pockets is not a good thing, so get the soil under there. Now when I'm backfilling, I'm putting the soil all around the sides, and then what I'll do with my fingers is I like to make claws and go with claws pushing down. That way I'm compacting the soil, but it's not completely compacted like with flat hands, because I do want some of it to be loose. If you compact it at the start, it's going to make it hard for water to come down, even though it should be good soil that takes the water. If you're going to compact it too hard, you're going to pack it like cement, and it's just not going to help with water retention at the start. Now that it's in and it's nice and even, I'm just topping up the soil at the top. It's looking fantastic. I want that crown of where all the roots start to be pretty much near the top of the pot and the soil level. You don't want it down really deep. That's what I'm doing here. And then with the container, I've noticed that it's sitting on an angle. So I've rushed around, I've found a plank of wood, and I've just wedged a plank of wood underneath at the back to keep the top of the pot even. That way the tree is going to sit up nice and straight, nice and even. And also when watering, the water is going to sit on top nice and evenly as it starts to draw down and seep down as I'm filling it. Next, I fertilise with blood and bone. Some people call it bone meal in other countries. Once that tree is in the soil, I then come along, give it a nice water, a nice deep water, get that soil nice and moist. And then the next day, I always wait 24 hours. I'll come back with a seaweed emulsion or a fish emulsion, a nice nutritional additive that I can add to some water and dilute that, read the instructions on the container and make it a little bit weaker because you've been playing with the roots. And then what I'll do is I'll put that into the soil and let that soak in and drain down into those roots. That way, those roots and the tree itself are going to benefit from the beautiful nutrition that it gets, and that's going to hopefully help reduce the shock from being transplanted from one container to another, especially in my case where I've actually tampered with the roots and cut some off at the bottom. Now, I haven't done it here on camera, but I do suggest mulching the top of the container. Mulching is going to keep the soil moist, it's going to stop weeds, and especially being a container, that's going to get bombarded by the sun. When that container heats up, it's going to evaporate the water. But if you've got a mulch on top, whether it be a pea straw, a hay, wood chips, whatever you've got as a mulch, that's going to keep the moisture in the soil a lot longer, and it's going to be better for your tree overall. So here mine is a week later, it's going quite well. As you can see, I've got a netting bag over the top of it. I've got a horrendous problem with birds here and fruit flies. Fruit flies are not so bad with the mulberries, but the birds love my mulberries. So these bags do the trick. They stop them completely, and it's a lot more mulberries for me. Now I'm going to keep this in the container because I want to keep this tree at a certain size. So by restricting the root ball underneath, it's going to restrict the overall size of the tree. It's from a dwarf mulberry stock anyway, so it shouldn't grow too big. But just by planting mulberry trees into the ground, they are going to have the freedom of the roots going as far as they want, as long as they want. And that will encourage the tree to grow a bit bigger because they've got a lot more reach to a lot more nutrition and stuff like that. So by confining it to a pot container, it's going to limit the root growth to the size that you want, and it's going to stay healthy because as long as you keep up with your water and your nutrition, that's the only space this tree is going to be able to get that sort of thing, because it's you that's watering, giving it food in that limited space that it has to grow. Having said that, you're always going to want to grow in a large pot, the biggest pot you can if you want a bigger tree. In this case here, with this pot that I've got, I think that's about as big as I'm going to go on this particular tree because I've got so many others here that I propagate and grow. I've got other videos on my channel where I prune my trees and show you how to do that, all the particular cuts that you need, when and how, etc. And I'm going to have a video on my channel soon where I propagate my mulberries, because like this one here, I've got a whole bunch of propagated mulberries in my yard, and I'll show you how exactly I go about that and when. These two videos on the screen are going to take you to the video where I prune my mulberry tree, and the other video is going to be an update 4 weeks later where you'll see the results of my pruning and how it went. Thank you so much for being here as always, and I hope I'll see you in the next cooking or gardening video. Bye for now.